All right, my friends. Hey, I really want to thank you for being here today, for taking on this journey. This is not necessarily an easy task, yet it's simple. There's a simple process of removing all of those hidden traps. Those, sometimes we call them upper limits and lower limits, these invisible barriers that keep us here. And interestingly enough, this starts with linguistics, the way that we speak. It's important, but it's also important to know that we're a really blessed species, a race of people. The reason that humans can do as much as they can is we're able to mimic. We're able to learn from our parents, our grandparents, from televisions, from the time that we're really little. We pick up everything that we know about ourselves and the known world by our environment. And our environment shapes a lot of things about us. Where were you born? Who were your parents? What were you taught? As growing up, we don't actually know what the word sky is. We don't know what blue is. We just get to mimic and learn. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say that for some weird reason, while you were young, whoever was your main male figure, this could be a pastor, this could be a parent, a grandparent, and you would go over there and you loved him and you trusted him. And every morning when you would go outside and you would see that big thing out there, the sky, he would say, "Look, it's red today. Look how beautiful this red sky is." And over time, you believed that red was blue. I know this is kind of a complicated question or a thought process, but just imagine for a moment, whether you close your eyes or whether you just imagine what would happen if something so fundamental as a color was inaccurately described to you. And you said, "Oh, I trust him. It's red." And then to make it farther, blue to everybody else was red and red was blue. You would go to school. You would go through life. You would go to traffic lights. And everywhere you went, your interpretation of the world would be slightly different because of what you believed to be true that was told to you by somebody you trusted. And maybe he didn't mean to do anything wrong. Maybe to him, that was the right colors. So just imagine that this could be pretty dramatic, and traumatic. Wherever you went, you would have internal conflict. Did they lie? Did they tell the truth? Trying to remember, oh yeah, that's the wrong color. So in life, we actually have quite a few of these. We, as growing up in psychology, they'll tell us that the majority of your subconscious programs, the things that make you you, were decided by the time you were, say, 8 to 10 years old. Sometimes it's a little less. What you like, the way you speak, your religion, all of these things grow. And as human beings, we grow and we start to learn. And a lot of times what we do is we pick up a new book. We say, "Oh, I want to change this about myself." And so we go out there and we grab something and we say, "Oh, I want to learn this." Flick, 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 flick. And we learn something new, but we're stacking it on top of old patterns, processes, understandings that aren't necessarily true. And so this is where the upper and lower limits come in. We start to fight over and over. Why can't I get there? What's the underlying information or underlining information, information that keeps me here? Because I'm not really sure where I'm going next. I'm not really sure why I keep getting there. And we have a lot of great things, a lot of great information. We have psychologists, we have coaches and mentors. And as a coach and mentor in the past, a lot of times before I understood these concepts, I was trying to change or trying to help somebody with the symptom, not necessarily the cause. And so in learning how to free yourself, when I say free the I, that is I. Every time I say the word I, I'm sick today. I want chocolate. I want to go on a vacation. I'm hurt. Any of these words that we use on a daily basis are, it's a word that can symbolize anything, and it symbolizes something to every different person on the planet. If I were to speak to any one of you right now and I say, what do you like? And you say, I like, and if we were talking about food, this. Well, your I is different than mine. And unfortunately, in our language, in most languages, we use this word over and over and over again. I'm hurt. I can't believe I fell for that again. I'm not sure what to do. And the more that we use this word as a catch-all. We continue to grab more and more information and stuff it into the I. Well, what if the I wasn't meant to hold all this information? What if it wasn't meant to hold all of these definitions? What if the I was just meant to be pure? And the only time that you use the word I for yourself, you understood what that means. And it's easy to just say, well, I know what I means. I want to go to the mall. I want to go to the grocery store. Yet, when we use these words thousands and millions of times, the neural receptors in our brain start making all kinds of funny connections around the I. And it's why we get triggered so many times. And not just specifically talking about the I, it's, I've always been this way, or somebody has always abused me. Why do I seem to fall for that trap? And we're talking about them, and yet we're bringing what they've done to the I, to the ego, to who I am. And so there's millions of these little traps. So in order to free the I, we actually get to understand what that I is. To drop into this a little bit further at this point in time in this lesson, what I would love us to do is drop into something called coherence. It takes us 3 minutes to get into. And it's basically, we're going to take the neuroreceptors, the rosehip peptides, or the peptides that are revolving around our heart. The rosehip peptides do something else. But our heart has a field. It can be looked and measured at. With the right information, you can watch the electromagnetic current that flows around the heart. So not only are we talking about something that feels really great, it's proven and backed. And then in our brain, we have neurons. And each one of these, and we have other body parts that have neurons and receptors as well, but these are the two main. So our brain goes, okay, great. All of the neurons around here are telling my brain what to fire and what chemicals. And my heart is actually doing something as well. And a lot of times they're acting in different ways. And so in order for us to move forward, I want us to drop into something called coherence. It's just bringing the heart and the mind together. It's super simple. This is a really easy process. All you're going to do is take both hands, place them on the heart, close your eyes, tip your head up slightly. And the reason that I tip up my head slightly is because it forces my eyes to be elevated, which kind of puts them around in this position, which if you're into energy work, this is your third eye, but you don't have to push hard where you're not. We want your attention to be here with your eyes and your attention to be here with your heart. And for 3 minutes, this is it. We're just going to breathe together. We're going to breathe so that as we move into the next piece, we can make what seems really complicated extremely easy and learn in minutes what could take years. So just closing your eyes, bringing your heart, your eyes slightly up, taking a deep breath with me. Filling the lungs completely and exhale. In one breath, you already started to feel better. Doing it again. And breathing all the oxygen out of your lungs, pulling your belly button towards your backbone and your spine, emptying the day. And breathing in. Just holding that focus for another minute. All right. Bringing yourself back into kind of center, into your presence. Just taking a minute to notice how much more calm your mind, where your heart is. Feels like at this moment that you could learn or do anything. This is taught by the Heart Math Institute. By doing this 3 times a day, you'll increase the field of your heart and keep more resonance between the two, so that you stay in this focused place, which is amazing, super beautiful. In the beginning of the call, we started talking about what the I is and how many times we crunch the I into whatever we want it to be. That word is so powerful. You can use words like God, and that can mean anything to all 7.5, as we're getting close to 8 billion people. Same with the word I. Where the fun comes in is learning, what am I actually meaning? What do I mean when I say this? The beautiful part about this is it's really simple to figure out. It takes a little bit of work. Here's what I'm going to have you do. Over the next week, before we get into the call, you get to start to teach your mind and the neurons in your brain how many times you're saying I, and what are you actually meaning by this? Now, this can be kind of maddening. You may use this word a lot. So the best thing to do is just keep a notepad or even your cell phone and do the best you can. The more detailed you are with this, the more expansion you will learn yourself. This isn't something that I can actually teach you, that Greg can teach you to learn. All I can do is open the doorway. And then the mind starts to open up and it says, oh, wow, we're actually using this word a lot. And we're using this word in ways that we never meant to. But until we took time to analyze it, then how can we ever change it? How can we edit or increase the value that we're bringing to the world and the value that we're bringing to yourself unless we actually know what we're saying? And most importantly, the meaning. You can spend years in therapy trying to figure out why I was a part of something without ever actually figuring out what the I was that I'm speaking about in that moment, past tense of something that doesn't even exist anymore. This is where things get really confusing to a lot of people, and why in this program, I choose to deliver something that's very simple. We don't need to go down and follow every rabbit hole. We don't need to unwind your entire life to figure out what had happened when you were 5 years old to learn a certain thing. All we get to do is change the definition of what the word I means to you, and then everything else can change. And you can see where this becomes the catalyst to be able to open up the who am I? If I were to ask you, who am I right now? It's a closed box. It's only as big as your understanding of what I means. I've said the word I so many times already, yet I think you can start to feel what it means when you say that. When I stand in front of a mirror and I use my affirmations and said, I am strong. Well, who is actually strong? What part of me is strong? And when I say that, does it mean that I can't be weak? This is where affirmations and traditional teachings start to get us really confused. Because when I attach to something, when the word I agrees, this is who I am, I have to be that way. Or I become a liar because I'm saying something and acting in a different way. So you can feel, for me personally, there was a time where I used the affirmations, I'm strong. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to be strong. So I am strong. And yet there were times in my life when the right choice and decision was to act or be vulnerable, which I was saying was weak. So I couldn't be weak. I had to be strong. And every time I wasn't, this is where the mind got really aggressive, because it wanted to prove to me that I was either a liar or why acting in accordance to a different way than I was telling myself to be instead of saying in this moment something, I'm strong in these aspects. I show up powerfully. I also get to be vulnerable. But traditionally, we don't do that. We only work on these I's, and it just crushes us over and over again. In the mind is beautiful. It's the best machine that's ever been created on this planet. And its job is to give you the most accurate information it can with the information that's available. That doesn't mean that it's always right. You can assume that when you were 7 years old, your understanding of something really impactful is different than your understanding now. So, as you get to grow and you start to expand, anything that we want to change that's personal around who you are, your ego, what you're capable of doing, we just get to first analyze the I. So this week's homework assignment is pretty easy, and while we can keep this lesson pretty short, your job is to track when you said the word I and what you meant. Now, this doesn't mean paragraphs. This doesn't need to be hard. It can be a fast notepad. I was out with John for lunch. He asked me, what do I want to eat? And I said, I want a Reuben sandwich. That's it. And it's just the act of you opening up the possibilities of how many times you're using these different neural connections that are in your brain to mean something. And once we do that, we can actually expand it. But there's really nothing else that can be taught, and there's nothing else that can be done until you understand what you're doing and how you're using this I. And it may be pretty impactful just to recognize it. You might actually start seeing how many times you're saying it and you don't actually mean I, the whole being. It just might, tonight, this first day, start to revolutionize the way that you understand about yourself. And this step is what will unlock the next step. So there's no reason to step any further until you start to understand and unpack the most powerful thing that you have on this planet, which is you, and which is here. And it's here that we'll find the triggers. It's here that we'll find the limitations. It's here where we'll free the I, opening the expansion of the I. This is actually really funny to think of. My goal is for you to increase your capacity by 1%. And you're like, Greg, that doesn't sound like a lot. 1%, what does that mean? I'm not here to try to revolutionize your entire world. We're talking about this one piece. But do you know what the closest relative to the human is? It's an orangutan. And we share 99% the same DNA as the orangutan. You can look it up, Google it. We're 99% the same. A 1% increase is the difference between an orangutan living in his habitat in the jungle and you watching this right now. So 1% means everything. But it's not revolutionized. It's not forcing you to change or edit or look at everything in your life. You're just looking at one thing. You're just looking at the I. And that's it. It's very easy. And my friend, I really look forward to our next week, what you're learning from this, what's kind of opening for you, and how it really feels to track this I. Now I'm going to open this up for any questions that anybody may have. The homework, like I promised you, this is a simple lesson, simple follow-through steps, very, very profound. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and let you, if you choose, if you have a question or anything, I'll let you unmute yourselves.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any questions, Trey?
I do.
Cool.
And in forming this question, I'm kind of feeling into the practice itself.
Yeah.
So, and I may be overthinking it too. I right? As in like this mind that's kind of navigating um,
Yes.
through this thing. And I'm curious if the practice is simply just acknowledging when I'm using the word and in what context, or if
Mhm.
like informing this question, I'm thinking, you know, I, and what is this I that I'm describing? You know,
Yeah.
who is feeling this thing that I'm using this word I to do? So is it like, you know, I asked Greg this question, or
It can be. It can be super simple like this. The purpose of the homework is to get you to do what you just did.
hmm,
The moment that you started saying I, you're like, actually, what is saying I? It, does my brain want to ask a question? Or does I, my entire being, am I really confused about something? Or whatever those pieces are. So the homework itself is the lesson. And what you're doing is perfect. So tracking it to whatever you feel. It is important, though, that it's not just I did something and I didn't write it down and I just took a moment and said, oh, I'm going to acknowledge this and move on. That's kind of like operating, I'm going to remember my dream, you know, that beautiful dream that you had. And then you woke up and you're like, oh, wow, I really want to remember this. And 30 seconds later, it was gone. This is where that kind of action starts to happen. So
hmm,
just managing it, even a small notebook, I, and you just do tallies if you're really busy. It doesn't have to be very, very profound, but marking that. And then if you have the time, questioning what you just did. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be so aggressive. Yet at times it might feel a little maddening because you're starting to question something that's been on autopilot for maybe as long as you can remember.
thank you.
You're welcome. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Let's see. Vicky, you had a question or a statement on here, which was, I attempted listening to those I am affirmations last week. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for me too well. I understand why. I tend to believe things that others tell me instead. If those affirmation videos um, said you are, I would have believed them. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of times where these things work really well. Affirmation statement is very impactful when you understand how it works. Um, there's a lot of misinformation or old information and really great information. An affirmation itself only works when you truly feel the thing that you're saying. Removing the word I out of the equation, if my vessel wanted to be healthy, I, Greg, my mind, my heart, my soul would have to believe that I'm going to be healthy. If I use an affirmation that says I am healthy and I don't have the feeling or the belief system behind it, it doesn't actually do anything. There are people that will say, look, repetition is king. Do this 1,000 times and you'll start to believe it. And that last part was true. If you believe something, and there's nothing to say that you'll believe it after 1,000 times. There's nothing to say that you'll believe it after 5 times. And there's nothing to say that you won't. So an affirmation or in general personal development, there's a lot of misinformation, and it's not necessarily that anybody's trying to hurt somebody. They're just, maybe they're not educated in what happens when you don't believe it. Maybe the way that they use it is perfect for them. I have really amazing friends that have manifestation skills like mad crazy. And I'm just like, I don't quite understand how you're doing that. They're like, well, I speak it and it happens. I'm like, great. What are the mechanics? What are the celestial mechanics that make this work? Where does that fit inside of Newton's laws? How do we actually create this piece other than just saying it? And for them, it's true because they already had the belief systems. And yet for other people, we actually get to do some work, and that's not bad or good. It's just some people think one way, some people think another way. So now I hope that opens that up for you. And if you guys, if either of you have any more questions, if you want to chat it or ask, it's beautiful. And if you don't, just follow through and know this might be a little maddening. This is where it's simple but not easy comes from. and it's poking the bear. It's challenging what is your current reality so that this can be opened up. And it's done in a very specific format and specific way so that it's not confusing. You're not opening Pandora's box. You're just wondering, why am I saying I? And then we'll take it from there. Was there any other questions you guys have? If not, we'll call it. And we'll do the same call next week and we'll go over what this was and then what the next steps are. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and pause it or stop it from here, and we'll be on next week. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon.